Hej och välkomna tillbaka till Erik Penser Banks bolagsdag 24 augusti 2023. Jag heter Claus och är aktieanalytiker på banken. Vi ska gå vidare i agendan. Och nästa bolag som ska presenteras är Initiator Pharma. Och för att presentera bolaget har vi vd Claus Elsborg Olesen. And I guess you will have the presentation in English?
Yes, my Swedish is not well enough to explain all the good data that I have today.
Okay.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you, and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, Initiator Pharma, with the usual disclaimer here, but Initiator Pharma is a clinical stage pharma company dedicated to development of innovative drugs within critical unmet medical needs within the peripheral and the central nervous system. I'll get more into details on what it is on a later stage. We are a Danish company. We are headquartered in Denmark. We are listed on First North under the name of Init, and the current financing will support the company into 2025. We have a market cap of around 400 million Swedish, and we have about 3,500 shareholders. Among the shareholders, we also have two cornerstone investors, and that's shareholders, that's Link and Adrigo, that are specialists in the pharma area, and we are really happy to have their support together with our large group of retail investors, together with the management also sitting on a significant portion here. We have raised about 200 million Swedish to this point, and actually all the data you will see today has been generated out of these raises that we have done throughout the years since 2017. We are sitting on a proprietary clinical stage pipeline that is very diverse in indications, but is a little bit more focused on what it is actually we are targeting of, you can say, of drug targets in the bodies. We have the Proprietary, formerly known as 2015, which we developed in organic ED and neuropathic pain. Here we have completed the enrollment in the phase 2B of 120 patients. I'll get back to that. We are also sitting on, we showed earlier that we had really nice pain data in a healthy volunteer study, and we are still working on this and trying to analyze what we can actually use it for best in the clinic. Then the IP2018 program, which we just had readout of the clinical phase 2A trial in 24 patients in June. We actually came out with statistical significance, and I'll also come back to that. So again, very positive data here. Then we have two assets in the preclinical development pipeline, IP2016 and 2017, that we are exploring their utility in depression, pain, anxiety, and other indications. But they are preclinical, so they are not ready for the clinic yet. So why is modulation of these monoamines that I showed you, why are they of relevance for patients? And also why do we think we are good at modulating these? Well, the monoamine system is a network of neurons in the brain that actually using dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine as neurotransmitters to regulate a lot of processes. These processes can be emotions, it can be arousal, it can be mood, specific thoughts of memory, but also some motor score or motor functions. So it's actually something that has a broad applicabilities, and that's also why you see that drugs that modulate these neurotransmitters are used in many different indications. One of them, you can say one of the most validated one is actually that they have been used in treatment of depression, where you increase the serotonin levels, and they also have utility in various forms of pain. However, one of the challenges or the significant side effects of these drugs is that if you increase one of the monoamines too much, you get undesirable side effects. In the instance, for example, people taking antidepressants, we see that up to about 70% of people taking antidepressants actually have sexual dysfunctions. So you might cure the underlying depression or help with it, but you also encounter new challenges with these drugs. What we are developing here is a new generation of monoamine modulatory drugs, where we actually have a more focus on making sure that we don't get these side effects, and we focus on some of the things that we're talking about here in the slide. Our major program is in erectile dysfunction, and we're starting here that it is expected that more than 400 million men will suffer from erectile dysfunction by 2025. This is normally driven by lifestyle, that we live longer, and I'll get back to some of the other causes of ED later. About 35% do not respond to the first line treatment. These are what we call the PD-5 inhibitors, also known as Viagra and Cialis. So we actually, in our program, we focus on the patients not responding to the standard of care or who cannot tolerate the standard of care. So we are not in a competition with what is already on the market. We are segmenting out in a large portion, 35% of 400 million is a lot of patients that needs treatment out there. Looking at you can say erectile dysfunction. There could be different causes of why we are getting this. And one of the most known ones is what we call the organic erectile dysfunction. That's what happens to men when we turn 40 and older. We simply get physical impairments to deliver sufficient blood to the penile tissue. So we are getting challenged. You can say that the system is not trimmed anymore. This is often driven by lifestyle, overweight, age, cardiovascular complications, diabetes, and so on. Here we can say that looking at what is the opposite, what is actually what we call here, we refer to it as psychogenic. And psychogenic is actually covering where you also experience erectile dysfunction. But it's not because you have any of these physical impairments. It's different impairments. And these are what we can say that it could be indifferences, performance anxiety, low self-esteem, depression, or taking antidepressants, causing a different form of ED. It's still the same phenotype. You cannot get an erection for an intercourse. But there is a different, you can say, comorbidity behind it. What is actually driving this? So therefore, we are developing 2 drugs, one for organic and one for psychogenic ED. When you go and get treatment today, you normally go to your doctor, and if you have a problem, you will get a PD-5 inhibitor. So that's Viagra, Levitra, Cialis. And in many patients, they respond well. You go to a doctor, you follow up, and everything is good. In a large portion of patients, we see no response. You try to give more, a higher dose. You try to change to another PD-5 inhibitor. Not always successful because they're working via the same mechanism of action. So you're just kind of targeting with a new, but it could be tolerability issues, or you do a combo of these. But actually, as I said before, about 35% are unresponsive to the first line treatment. And if you look, for example, in diabetic patients, you see that the response rates increases up to 50%. So what do we do in that case? Well, there's different things we can do. We can try to look at what other treatments are they getting. Can we optimize that? We talk about psychosexual therapy. We also talk about lifestyle modifications, so losing weight and doing more exercise. And then we're talking about, how to use the PD-5 inhibitors, at what time, and how much alcohol can you consume, and so on. If that is not a solution, there is products out there today that can treat these patients, and they are injectables. It's Cavijet and Muse, where you have to insert or inject yourself with a substance, and albustrudil, which you go in and give you a dilation of the blood arteries, and then you get an erection. But it's really important here. This is a different form of erection. This is completely independent of stimulation. So it's just something that occurs. So it's not very used, and a lot of people actually refrain from using this. So there's a clear unmet medical need here in these non-responders or patients who cannot tolerate it. Dopamine, and saying, how do we think about erectile dysfunction? How do we think about the erection response? Well, we know that dopamine plays a central role in the natural erection response. Normally, when we get an erection, we are being stimulated, we see something nice, we're being touched, we remember something nice, and that is processed into the brain. This is you can start feeling as an expectation. This is the sensation you get. The same thing if you see a nice birthday cake, it's going to taste nice, you look forward to start. This is dopamine speaking to you in the brain. It's specifically high in the PVN, the paraventricular nucleus, which is also going to be referred to as the sex center of the brain. And then it's transmitted down through the spinal cord, leading to the production of nitric oxide, which causes the dilation of the blood arteries. When blood arteries increase in size, more blood can flow in. So what is it actually we are doing with our compound? Well, here's a little bit close up of the brain. Here's a neuron. So this is one of the neurons that we excite when we see something nice or remember something. There's a release of dopamine into the synaptic cleft where it binds to the dopamine receptors and sends the signal down through the spinal cord. When the signal needs to stop, it's actually transported back into the neuron so it's ready for the next signaling event. And this is done by what we call a dopamine or monoamine transporter. And this is exactly the target of both pudafensine and IP2018. They go in and block this transport, and what happens then? We increase the presence of dopamine in the synaptic cleft, both the concentration but also the duration that it stays around, thereby getting a stronger signal. So we are amplifying, we are strengthening the natural erection response by using these compounds. They have different profile that matches the indications, but I'll not go into details on this today. So the 2 trials that we are running right now, or we can say that the top one we have data in, so really excited. There was a phase 2A trial in 24 patients. We got positive data. I will show you some of this in a minute. And right now we are evaluating that data and finding out how actually to use that for designing a phase 2B. Not meaning that we need to do it, but it's also part of our business development, going out and telling the potential buyer of this asset what should they do to really make the kick out of this proof of concept that we have generated in the first 24 patients. The study below, IP2018 study, that's an organic ED with putafensin. This is a little bit different study. I'll come back to that. 120 patients. Enrollment is completed, and we expect the top-line data here in Q4. And we are really looking forward to seeing this data as well. So looking at the 2018 program, what we did here is a phase 2A study. And I would just like to point out that this is a proper phase 2A study. This is a placebo-controlled study. So we don't know, it's randomized, it's blinded, so it's done the way pharma wants to see these studies. Here we actually done a 3-way crossover, high and low dose of 2018 and placebo. So that means that each patient that comes in is being dosed 3 times. Placebo, high and low dose, and we evaluate after each segment. The patients we included in this trial are male patients that are diagnosed with mild depression or low mood and also have ED. And we measure this on the Hamilton score, looking at the at the depression, and they have an IEF score between 12 and 18. So these we bring into the study. The study is what we call a RetiScan study, and that means that we bring them in. They get the dosing of the tablets, and then we show them an erotic movie. And with the RetiScan apparatus, we can measure the rigidity, the duration of rigidity, the tumescence, and so on of the penis. So it's a little bit of an artificial setting, but this is also what we have done previously for putafensin, and this is also what's been done in the early days for Viagra and Cialis. And as we mentioned, the data came out positive here in June of 23. We see from the study there is a dose-dependent significant efficacy of IP2018. The high dose of 2018 increased the penile tumescence with the right p-value. And also we see a high dose of IP2018 shows increased duration of rigidity. And these 2 parameters, the tumescence and the rigidity, are 2 really important measurements for being able to start and completing an intercourse. So these are really, really, really relevant efficacy endpoints. What is also very important, of course, is that safety and tolerability. And we see no safety observations of concern here. We see the usual stuff. You see a little bit of a headache, you see a little bit of gastrointestinal events, but they're very mild. And we also see them in the placebo group. So it's not all drug related. It is also coming into you can say a clinic where there's only male nurses around you helping you with these little bit artificial study is also creating anxiety in some of our male patients here. So we are super excited about this, and what I didn't put on this slide is actually we also just got the patent in the European patent issued exactly for this indication of the mild depressed patients suffering from ED. So we got brand new protection for medical use claims on this specific indication. So we are now packing up all this. We are hitting the road, start showing this to potential interested parties that we have spoke to before, and then we now promise to show the data when we have it. So looking forward to an exciting fall on this program here. Jumping to the next program, IP 2015 in organic erectile dysfunction. Somewhat a little bit, as I mentioned, a different program, and also we're a little bit further with the clinical trials here. Here I'm just showing a reminder that we did a similar RetiScan study for this, for putafensin, as we did with 2018 originally. And here we only included 12 patients, and we saw that 25% of these non-responders actually responded to the treatment. And this led us to do the next study. And the next study is somewhat different. Again, a proper pharma clinical trial. It's a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled group study, and this is what we call a repeat single oral dose study. I'll come back to the details on that. And here we split the 120 patients into 3 groups, so high and low dose of putafensin, and then also a placebo. It's been running across 7 sites in the UK, and we are now looking forward to getting the data here in Q4. What's really important to say here is again that this is actually the same endpoints that we are measuring here that also will be used in a later pivotal trial. And I'll get to that here on this slide. But first on the design, what is it we do? Well, we select the patients We come in, of course, it is a phase 2, so we still look at safety and tolerability. They come in for 4 repeated dosings. So they come in, they get the compound, and then they go home to their partner and they can perform an intercourse. So this is a different study. This is not an apparatus that is attached to the patient. They actually get the medication and they can go home and have a normal intercourse with their partner. What we do then every time they come back to the clinic for the next dosing, we assess what was the impact of getting the drug last time. And here we are also assessing also on the EEIF score, which is the international index of 15 questions, where you not only ask questions about can you get an erection and is it hard enough and can it sustain throughout the intercourse, but we also talk about sexual desire, orgasmic function, and intercourse satisfaction. So you can say a much more real life readout, but also the readout that actually has been used to register Cialis and Viagra and Cialis back in the day. We are doing some erotic movie challenges also to bridge into the phase 2A. We're doing semen assessment, and then of course we're running PK/PD assessments as well in this group. So this is the study we've done, and we've done it together with the Mac Clinic in the UK that you maybe remember invested in this. They actually bought the shares at a 70% premium at the time to finance this trial for us. So we're looking, jumping fast there. So we're looking forward to see the readout in Q4 of this, and you can say that people are often asking, do you feel comfortable? Well, that's a good thing about a double-blinded study. We don't know anything before we see the data. But remember again, we have already shown in a phase 2A here that we saw efficacy. So I'm really comfortable about this and looking forward to get the data. And I believe that looking at these more sexual desire and orgasmic function and so on endpoints will be really important in this, because instead of just looking at the erection, which of course is important to start the intercourse, the rest needs to follow, and that will help also completing and have a good satisfaction of an intercourse. So with that, I'll jump to one of the last slides. What is it we have? We have a unique offering to the investors, we believe. We have actually an attractive risk-reward profile of the clinical programs, and I'll try to define that a little bit. The mid-stage, so we are over the safety, so we can show that we can actually administrate these drugs without getting some of the known side effects from monoamine modulators. We also, you can say, we are working with validated drug targets. We know that dopamine plays a central role in the erection response. And also, there is a lot of clinical proof of concept study, not only completed by us, but other people working in this space. But they had never identified a compound that they could administrate safely. We are targeting a significant unmet medical need here, and we can also show this can potentially be a very attractive commercial positioning, because there's a lot of patients out there and they're willing to pay. The clinical trials we're looking into and the ones we conducted, of course, they take time, but they do not take multiple years to have the readout. You can see that with the repeat dosing, every dosing we get, we can actually get a readout that we can use. So it's fairly short, and also, of course, by having this, there will also be a modest investment into such trials. What's also very nice is that the endpoints that we're using are regulatory validated, so we don't need to start that and explain to the authorities what to do here. We have delivered now proof of concept data for both 2018 and 2015, and now we're looking forward to the intercourse study coming out in Q4 of 23, and I'm super excited about going forward here. So we have a very cost-efficient organization. I don't think you will find many biotechs that for 200 million Swedish have generated so many data as we have and still have money left well into 25. And so I think this is very unique on us. And then I also think that we still want to repeat that the management are actually still sitting on a significant shareholding from the beginning of the company. So we are fully incentivized here to keep on delivering and not spending on money on things that do not create value. So again, focus on delivering return on investment to everyone, including ourselves. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Claus. And I would like to start with the defense in phase 2B study, if it's possible. Could you describe a little bit what you are looking for? What are you hoping to see when the data actually is announced?
Statistical significance, right? You want to see something that stands above the placebo. Well, we are running the 2 dose levels. That's also nice to understand a little bit what is the dynamics of what we are dosing. Of course, we would like to be able to give the least compound possible to still get an effect, because that way you can say that it's more safe. We don't have any safety concerns with the doses we are using, but if people want to use it for a long time, it's just nice to being able to decrease the dose. What I'm looking very much forward is to see, especially you can say, I know there is a direct link between dopamine and leading to dilation of the arteries, so we get increased blood flow. But I'm looking real forward to see the results on desire, the overall satisfaction of the intercourse, because we know that dopamine also plays a role here, but it's a little bit more difficult. And you can say that we know from the PD5 inhibitor studies that having an erection is important, but it's not always that the satisfaction is much higher. And we believe that we'll also see some of this utility on putafensin, that they will also support these other measurements.
And that you have as a sort of a second outcome.
Yeah, so when we get the questions, we have focused on the primary ones. We can say that you have the physical capabilities, but all the other ones are assessed at each individual visit. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the design of this study is a bit different compared to the 2A study. Where do you believe in this study you will see better response rates, or what is your expectations when it comes to that?
This can be very dangerous to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we'll see better response rates, and I think that there's a few reasons for it. First of all, the patients we included in the phase 2A were really, they were, what we call moderate to severe, where the 2B are a little bit more towards the moderate segment. Another thing is that having men in our, I'll probably say I'm soon 50 as well, in our 50s and 60s, right, needing to go to a hospital, being surrounded only by male nurses, having something attached to you, is actually causing a lot of anxiety. We know from the psychogenic one, anxiety is not helping you to perform. So I think that there's a lot of things here that's very artificial. So you can say that I believe very much that signal will be stronger when you're home in comfortable environment. So that's why I believe that we will see a stronger response in this phase 2B trial.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. If you just could remind us a little bit about your strategy, especially of the two erectile dysfunction programs that you're running. How active are you on the partnering side?
So we are always active. We know that the space of ED has been very slow. So you can say that there's not been any breakthroughs in the treatment of ED since the development of the PD5 inhibitors. That's pretty much it. And so there has been a lot of people trying to optimize these products, trying to do different modalities, and so, but they're always coming back to the same MOA. So you can say that we are new in this. So of course we have spent the last couple of years trying to re-educate a lot of the farmers on that there's an unmet need, that they acknowledge, they know that. Even the big players that developed the PD5 inhibitors originally, they know that there's a lot of patients not responding. So what we are doing here is we are always going out there trying to tell them what we have. People are looking very much forward to see this intercourse study, because of course this is the real proof of concept in their world. And then also you can say that what we are trying to identify now, who is the right partner to do and develop this with in the future. Yeah. Because of course the success also depends on that you find a partner that actually has the ability to take it forward. Yeah, and a sort of a question about that is, when you're out there and presenting on conferences and so on, what kind of companies are interested in these kind of assets? Is it large pharma, or is it also mid-sized and smaller companies? It's pretty much the whole thing. So we see, I would say that some of the real big pharmas, they kind of look at, they say, yeah, but what is the market for the non-responders? We know how big it is for the responders, right? And that was a big market, but can we do that again, and so on? And we're trying to explain, yes, you can. The bigger companies that actually have an interest in male health and sexual function, they're definitely interested in this. We are also very keen with the mid-sized pharma, because some of them, they actually can see the utility of maybe using this as a stepping stone to develop something really big because of what happened in the past, and developing, because this, 35%, that equals to the market share that a different asset had in the beginning, right? So it could be quite significant market for such a product. Yeah. And then of course the small companies are interested as well, but we need to find a partner that we are sure that has the resources and capacity to help us bring this all the way to the market. So that's things that we are considering as well. And you presented some pharmacokinetic data earlier this summer. Could you perhaps describe how important that data was for you? Yeah, so you can say that the studies that we have done so far, we have done with what we call drug in a bottle. So we actually have the powder, the API, the actual pharmaceutical ingredient. We put it in a bottle and shake it up with a liquid. And you say, why is not tablet? Well, because at the time when you don't need how big should the tablet be, then you can start making a lot of tablets, and it costs a lot of money. So to be more cost efficient, we actually use this drug in a bottle. So to be able to get this drug in a bottle into a tablet, then you need to do some formulation work, and you need to start, instead of having it as a drink, it needs to be dissolved and so on. And that you need to show and that's what we did in that pharmacokinetic study. We showed that it actually gives the same plasma concentrations as we do with drug in a bottle. Not only does this give us a way to produce a final product that can go to the market, but it also gives us more patent protection around this formulation. The patent life of pudafensine expires in 31, the composition of matter, and by this we are adding actually a significant increase to that length with the formulation patent.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Claus.
You're welcome.
And looking forward to exciting news flow.
So do I. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.